So imagine looking at two LinkedIn profiles. Both of them are super polished, sharp headshot, articulate summaries that hit at all the right notes, passion, results, leadership. But one of them was written by a person who spent hours agonizing over every word, whereas the other one was written by ChatGPT in 2 seconds. Could you tell the difference? Probably not. And that's exactly the problem. AI made it dramatically easier for everyone to present a much more impressive version of themselves. Better writing, photos, better profiles, and the research on how we form impressions suggests that this changes things more profoundly than most people realize. So today, I want to walk you through what the science says about how first impressions actually work, what AI is doing to that process, and what it means for you. Because if you understand what's happening, you can do something that almost no one else is doing right now. You can stand out by being genuinely and strategically real. So let's start with what we actually know about how first impressions form. For decades, researchers in psychology have been asking, when you meet someone for the first time, when you scan their face, read their bio, read their email, talk to them, what are you actually evaluating? And the answer, it turns out, is remarkably consistent across cultures and contexts. People make judgments along two fundamental dimensions. The first is warmth. Warmth captures your sense of another person's intentions. Are they trustworthy? Are they honest? Are they on your side or against you? So warmth might include things like friendliness and sincerity and helpfulness and morality. The second dimension is competence. Competence captures your sense of another person's ability. Can they deliver? Are they skilled? Are they intelligent, capable, effective? This is one of the most replicated models in all of psychology about impressions. These two dimensions, warmth and competence, account for more than 80% of the variance in how we form impressions of other people. Everything else is basically noise. Now, here's something important. These two dimensions are not equal. The research consistently shows that warmth is judged first and weighted more heavily when we're evaluating new people. In practice, this means that when you're forming an impression of someone through their email, profile, whatever it is, your brain is doing a rapid, automatic scan. Can I trust this person? Are they genuine? Are they for me or against me? And only then are you thinking, are they really good at what they do? Now, here's where things get interesting and a little bit uncomfortable. But right now, we're in the middle of a quiet revolution in how people present themselves professionally. And that revolution is being obviously driven by AI. For example, the cover letter. A few years ago, a cover letter was basically a test. Could this person express themselves clearly? Could they connect their experience to a job? Was there a real human voice in this document? Today, you can basically generate a well-structured, confident, persuasive, amazing cover letter for any job in 60 seconds. And millions of people are doing that. Another example is the LinkedIn profile. A recent study found that by late 2024, over 54% of LinkedIn posts were likely generated by AI. That's a 200% increase since ChatGPT was launched. The profiles themselves are being polished, rewritten, optimized by AI tools that promise to make you sound more professional, more impactful, more result-driven, and so on and so forth. Even the profile photo is now perfected by AI. To say that a photo is photoshopped is nostalgic right now. Always a confident gaze, immaculate background, perfect lighting. These tools have basically perfected everything about your LinkedIn profile. So now let's map all this onto the warmth and competence framework. What AI is doing is it's making everyone's written communication sound more competent. The grammar is cleaner, the structure is tighter, the vocabulary is sophisticated and spot on. The achievements are framed more strategically. AI is basically compressing the gap between a mediocre writer and a strong one. And perhaps more surprisingly, AI also inflates signals of warmth. AI-generated cover letters are trained to sound enthusiastic and collegial and warm. They use exactly the right phrases. They mirror an organization's language. They hit the right notes of sincerity that many real people struggle to express in writing. So when you put it all together, AI is raising the warmth and competent baseline for virtually everyone simultaneously. And that creates a very big problem. You see, when everyone looks excellent, no one stands out. Think about what differentiation actually does for us. When warmth is variable, when some people come across as genuinely warm and others come across as cold or transactional, that variation carries a signal. A recruiter who reads a cover letter and senses real warmth has learned something real about a candidate. They've received useful information. The same way, when competence is variable, when some people's writing is crisp and structured and other people's writing is not, that variation is also informative. It tells you something about how that person thinks and communicates. But what happens to competence when the signals are always high because AI has made everyone's profile polished? The signal breaks down. The variation that was diagnostic completely disappears. If you're a recruiter reading 200 cover letters and 150 of them are polished by AI and hit all the same notes and use all the right phrases, then what you've lost is the ability to distinguish good candidates from bad candidates. What this creates is a new environment, one where the old signals are inflated and so they're devalued. They're no longer important. And in this environment, something that cannot easily be AI generated becomes exponentially more valuable. Now, that thing, I would argue, is authenticity. So let me be precise here because the word authenticity is a word that gets thrown around a lot. In research, authenticity has been defined most clearly as having several components. The first is self-knowledge. It means genuinely knowing your values, your strengths, your limitations, without distortion or defensiveness. Authenticity also involves consistency, meaning behaving in ways that align with the self-knowledge across different contexts and situations, rather than performing a different version of yourself depending on what the audience seems to want. Authenticity involves honesty in relationship, being willing to show who you actually are to others, including the parts that are imperfect and not so great, rather than only presenting a curated, perfect version. And crucially, if people see you as authentic, as being who you are, that's associated with important positive outcomes, like people will trust you more, will think you're more credible, and you'll have longer and better relationships with them in the personal and professional domains. Now, this is not just about feeling that you're authentic. This is about being perceived by other people as authentic. These are two different things. You need to be able to send signals that you're an authentic person to another person in a way that they would buy it. So here are 4 concrete, research-grounded things that you can do to come across as genuine and authentic in a way that cannot be faked by AI. First, you want to use specific stories that have actually happened to you, not generic claims. One of the most reliable markers of authenticity is being very specific. AI generates plausible generalities. For example, it would say something like, results-driven leader with a passion for people and process, collaborative and strategic thinker. These phrases have been written so many times that they've lost basically all meaning, and they carry no warmth signal because they reveal nothing real. An authentic signal looks very different. It names a specific moment with specific people and a specific decision that you made and a specific failure or limitation that you're experiencing. For example, a real story might be, I managed a team through a restructuring where half the people I'd hired were let go. And then you name the people that were let go and what they meant to you. And you say why these were the hardest 3 months of your career and what actually happened there. That kind of story tells you something real. It signals warmth through vulnerability and competence through the willingness to engage with difficult challenges. When you write something like this in your bio, an AI is unlikely to be able to fake it, and especially when you actually talk to somebody about the story and they can see the emotional attachment you have to that story, again, AI is unlikely to fake that. Second, showing your thinking rather than just the conclusions. AI is very good at presenting polished conclusions. For example, it might say something like, I believe in servant leadership. I prioritize psychological safety. These claims sound good. They also sound identical to what everyone else is saying. What's harder to fake is how you think. Authentic warmth and competence come through when you show your reasoning, the tension that you have to go through when you're making a tough decision, the genuine uncertainty behind a position. For example, you might say something like, I used to think that the most important thing a manager does is set clear expectations. And I've changed my mind since then, and here's why. And then you add a real life story to explain why you changed your mind. That kind of statement can only come from a human being who has actually thought through these issues. It's almost impossible to replicate at scale. So in your self-presentation, you want to show your thought process, especially in real time. Don't just give the answer, you want to give the journey. Third step is to acknowledge your limitations without performing humility. There's a particular pattern in AI written things that has become very easy to detect, which is the performed limitation. For example, an AI might say, my biggest weakness is that I care too much, or I sometimes push myself too hard. These read as really insincere because they're not really limitations. And also, they're not very specific. They're super general. They're basically competence signals dressed as modesty. Research on warmth and competence consistently shows that genuine acknowledgments of real limitations increases trust significantly more than polished self-presentations. The authentic version of limitations is not a disguised strength. It's a real thing that you genuinely struggled with. And you pair that with something you've actually done about it. That combination, honest limitation that feels a little bad to say, plus real effort to improve and be better, is one of the strongest warmth signals that's available to you. And it's one that AI will struggle to manufacture in a convincing way. Step 4 is you want to be consistent across channels. That's a practical and important step. In the AI era, one of the most powerful authenticity signals is consistency. That means that you're not tailoring every communication you have to different audiences, even at the price of being a little bit imperfect for the audience that you're talking to. You don't want to tailor every communication you have to every different audience that you're facing. So when your LinkedIn voice sounds exactly like your email voice, and that sounds exactly like how you come across in a first conversation, that consistency is very reassuring to people who are evaluating you, even at the price of being a little bit imperfect to every different type of audience that you're facing. Consistency means that you're a real person. What you see is what you get. But when you polish everything to the audience and each communication channel doesn't quite match the previous one, there's a little bit of a mismatch. And people will trust you less because of it. So the goal isn't to be uniformly polished everywhere. The goal is to have a consistent, recognizable voice, one that carries the same warmth, the same way of thinking, the same rough texture across different types of interaction. You want to optimize for consistency, not for perfection. So here's what the research is telling us about this moment. For decades, the challenge in professional self-presentation was raising the floor, getting competent enough, providing well-written cover letters, getting polished enough to clear the bar. So AI has done that for almost everybody. The floor has risen dramatically. But in raising the floor, AI has also devalued all the signals that used to live at that floor. What remains scarce, what AI cannot manufacture, is the evidence that there's a real person behind the profile. Someone whose thinking you can follow, someone whose story is specific enough that it can only be theirs, someone who tells you something true about themselves and it's not flattering to themselves, but is actually a real person. That scarcity is your opportunity. In a world of AI polish, the most powerful thing you can do is be consistently and honestly yourself. The two dimensions that research tells us govern all of our impressions, which is warmth and competence, have always been best communicated by being authentic. AI just made it more true and more urgent than ever before. Okay, so if you found this useful, there's a lot more on the science of how we evaluate each other, build reputation, and become people others want to follow. So subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.